Alrighty, how's it going?
All right. Well, a couple things have happened with me this week, but I'll start with the one that is the most unexpected by far. So, back to playing D&D after a break. Back with Jimmy and the wife and the paladin and the fighter. And
I put my Yimpy stickers up forever.
It's up there. So I had a migraine a couple weeks ago, so I was not able to return to D&D because I was in the, so like we were getting ready to go, and Paige asked like, hey, can you read the boy a storybook while we get ready, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay. And so I'm reading the kid the book, like, and then Pokey Puppy went over because anything louder would make me like my eyes bug out of my head and like throw up on the ground, like level migraine.
Damn.
And then she's like, you're not going anywhere. I'm like, no. So Paige went by herself, and that what they did is they ballooned me, in which they just assumed my character was there.
Yeah.
Just wasn't talking.
Yeah.
And Paige is the obsessive note taker.
Good DM should be able to do that.
So she just you know, brought back her obsessive note taking and got me all caught up to speed, and it was no problem, right? So I went back last week, and we sat down and we were having a good session, and Jimmy started to do his shit, which the number one thing was talking over people and interrupting people and constantly needing to make it about himself. And this was something that like came up a long time ago, and
I thought this was addressed. Yeah, I thought.
And like now it's not just back. Now it's worse. Now it's actually worse than it was before, to the point of in character tantrums or whatever, were screaming at the table. And by screaming, I mean Paige and I are literally putting our hands over our ears because our ears hurt. Screaming.
In character.
In character. So it's in, and
it sounds like perhaps when they got a talking to, they were not getting what they wanted to out of these sessions.
So here's the thing. When I wasn't there, it was actually a much better session. And the session before that I was there was a much better session. So don't know what the fuck happened at this one, but it was like much worse. Like, and so I walked away from that, and I was talking to Paige, and I'm like, I have one session left in me. We're coming up on like what essentially is like a first major encounter. And I'm like, I'm going to tell the DM to plan that if I want to hit the ripcord, to just fucking kill my ass in this upcoming encounter, and I am going to just leave because I am like paying a babysitter so that I can go to play D&D and get mad and come home pissed off.
Sidebar, do you know if anyone else is echoing these feelings at the time?
Oh, I know Paige is.
Okay.
Because she's like, this fucking motherfucker. And, but I haven't spoken to the paladin or the fighter about this. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right.
Get killed off in the early season.
So ready to leave. I've put up with this for multiple months. Right, so I'll talk to the DM about setting up a possible ripcord. It's like, yeah, just kill my ass in this encounter.
What if a helicopter comes and picks you up and lifts you out of the story and drops you in a new campaign?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And then this kind of puts Paige in a different awkward position, because if she also wants to pull the ripcord, that's like 40% of the group. Right? And so that would essentially kill the group, right? But I'm like, I like, at the very least, I'll just watch the baby on Tuesday nights, like whatever, right? And we're hemming and hawing, and we're discussing about like, what if we just be like, hey, Jimmy, shut the fuck up the next time he goes off? Just like, just like
in character,
test the waters of, hey, can you just shut your fucking mouth and see where we get with that. And as we are discussing this, and I'm streaming late one night, Paige texts me, Jimmy left the D&D campaign on his own.
Huh.
Out of nowhere, no warning, just peace out, bye.
Huh.
And we're like, what the fuck? Turns out,
what happened?
Jimmy was really unhappy with how we were running the game. So for context, let's go back to session 0, right? In session 0, the part of session 0 is everybody puts forth what they want to do and what they're cool with and what they're not cool with, right? Me, the paladin, Paige, and the fighter, and the DM all went, we're good with anything. Don't give a shit. Whatever. Jimmy then makes the completely reasonable request that he's good with almost everything, but he's not a big fan of graphic depictions of gore in D&D and graphic depictions of like sex in D&D because he thinks that's like weird at the table.
Okay,
right?
sure.
And we all went, yeah, okay. That's no problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely no problem. And
I'm
not an
afraid
issue.
I'm afraid of the relevance here. Okay.
So no, we'll get there. Don't worry about it. And for context, I want to put out that this is the same session 0 in which I said my only request for this entire game is that I play a unique class. And everyone went, okay. And Jimmy lied about his class, lied about his race, and showed up with pre-rolled stats.
Yep.
Which is, come on, right? Come on. So we go forth, and I mentioned that the paladin is like a really the guy playing the paladin super chill, but he's playing the paladin as super aggro and is hitting on every single female character that we encounter and constantly making like sex jokes.
Okay.
And when Jimmy brought to attention, I really don't like his behavior making me so uncomfortable, the DM was like, that is not a depiction of graphic sex or gore. You agreed that this was all fine, and we've done like 15 sessions in which you haven't had a problem.
Is it just that he's basically just being like a playboy kind of character?
He's basically like, hey, girl.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Holler at me. Come on. Let's have a baby. Let's get pregnant.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, yeah, that's it. That was the tipping point.
All right.
Gone. Poof. So.
And not an invisible detection of the fact that y'all were getting fed up.
No. So you would think that me and Paige going at like being interrupted like 5 times in a row. But
the ability
Paige
to detect that
get interrupted 5 times in a row on one sentence. And you know what Paige looks like when she gets interrupted. You would have to be fucking oblivious to fucking like miss that shit.
But the person who's unaware of how much they're doing that does not have the detector to notice what other people are doing, right? The skills that cause the interruption are also the lack of detection for the room, you know? That's pretty incredible. That's ultimately very fortunate that everything wrapped itself up in a nice little
fortunate.
bow.
I'm now super excited to play D&D again.
But like the idea that like everything calmed down and then came back around and you were like on that final week, like, yeah, okay.
Like right before right before I probably crashed the campaign by leaving, Jimmy left and everyone's like, yeah, let's keep going.
And I know this is, I know you know, but like obviously as someone who's like you haven't really done any tabletopping or D&Ding before, like, you know, everyone who has wants you to have a nice experience with this so you can see how fun it can be.
Absolutely.
But you definitely are aware that like this type of experience is extremely atypical. And
actually, I totally disagree. This experience is bordering universal over time. I've spoken to a lot of tabletop nerds, and they have been like, you will encounter this.
Okay. Let me correct. Though the vibes are rancid.
Yes.
And I played with friends and people that I knew, or at worst were acquaintances of people that I knew. I have not done blind stranger campaigns.
Yeah. Well, we know the DM, but that's mainly the only point of contact.
I can't speak towards joining an anonymous group of strangers. I can only speak towards playing with people that you know and friends of friends. You know, a couple degrees of separation, and you're at the very least like, okay, you know, you pass muster. Everyone here is kind of chill.
So that just kind of like magically worked itself out. Though there is 2 points of annoyance for me.
Sorry, last thought on that is I feel like it might be the difference between solo queuing and queuing with friends in Discord. It's kind of like that, right?
There's 2 points of annoyance here. That, I mean, this is overall like a massive positive. Point of annoyance 1 is it's one of those things where, like, when the person who is driving you completely insane with their bad behavior goes, I can't handle you guys. Essentially, like, what? But you though, right?
Self-awareness.
But the other thing is that, like, okay, so here's the sequence of events. I want to make a warlock, and I build out my character out to 5 levels, and I'm like super excited to play a warlock. Jimmy lies about what his class is and then does the exact same warlock with the exact same spells. I go through a massive discussion with the DM and then completely retrofit my character into being a cleric and then play the cleric for multiple months. Then Jimmy leaves, and now there is a warlock-shaped hole with all of the skills that I would have had in the campaign empty because now I'm a cleric.
Yeah, was there ever any kind of like, what? It's just a coincidence kind of justification, or
no? We just never addressed it at all.
Just never addressed it. Okay.
Because when I ended up changing over to cleric, I had never cast a spell, so that meant there was absolutely no continuity issues.
Okay, because you always would you can just imagine, like, if someone else did the exact same thing to you, think about the level of tantrum that you would throw, right? But we don't live in that world where the hypocrisy means anything to you, because, again, if you had any self-awareness, we wouldn't be here to begin with. Like, the problems that this is many steps in to the original domino that is failing, which is your ability to just read the room, pick up, your behavior, and just, also, I think, like, even in character, like, I've seen people perform and, RP, like, go all in on that. Anything that might elicit a noise complaint is, like, completely unnecessary. Just by virtue of the way you play these games.
Oh, yeah, I left with a headache.
Right? So
it's, like, ridiculous.
So obviously you're getting really upset and using the in-character to mask that, because you don't have emotional regulation. But, like, that on its own should be reason enough for the room DM or everyone to be like, yo, can we not take it to that volume level, please? That's insane.
Yeah. So, hey, everything just
worked itself out
in a way that was unexpected, and very excited to play D&D, which was scheduled for tonight, except our babysitter got sick. So D&D is now postponed for multiple weeks.
Okay. Well, damn. But hey,
which is the way it goes. Sounds
like he took responsibility. Interesting. Huh.
All right. That's the most D&D shit ever. Scheduling adults is extremely difficult. It's very tough. Couldn't believe the feeling of, like, oh wow, you know what? People are right. Jimmy did fix it.
Yeah, he said he was going to fix it. He said he'd fix it, and then he did.
And he fixed it.
He took responsibility. He did.